You know, these days it's pretty difficult to find a good woman. Women of these days are far too insolent, far too empowered, far too modern. They are nothing like the women of yesteryears. Women of yesteryears were good women. They were submissive, quiet, unquestioning. They bent over backwards to ensure that their husbands were fed, relaxed, and their egos were constantly nursed. They were the real women. Once, there was a gentleman who married for his second wife, the proudest and most haughty woman that was ever seen. She had, by a former husband, 2 daughters of her own, who were exactly like her in all things. He had likewise, by another wife, a young daughter, but of unparalleled goodness and sweetness of temper. A childhood watching princesses and evil queens taught me you're only good if you're beautiful. I wanted to show that I was just as good and just as beautiful, but I had a bully, like every other kid, but no matter how many times I begged for help or for someone to believe me, they'd look at her face and call me a liar, because pretty people aren't mean. Disney princesses are everywhere. You could say they're taking over the world, but they're pretty harmless, minus the glitter, right? Unfortunately, that isn't the case. A recent study found that kids with higher levels of engagement with Disney princess culture were more self-critical, and their behavior was more gender stereotypical. These negative impacts can last a lifetime. So with the fairy tale Cinderella, poetry from Samantha Brown and Kiara Liu, and articles from NPR, The Washington Post, and the Kenyan New Times, Once Upon a Time, a program, because our stories don't always end in happily ever after. What was the first thing that culture told her about being a girl? Not that she was competent, strong, creative, or smart, but that every little girl wants, or should want, to be the fairest of them all. But honestly, since when did every little girl become a princess? It wasn't like this back when I was a kid, and I was born when feminism was still a mere twinkle in our mother's eyes. We did not dress head to toe in pink. We did not have our own miniature high heels. As my little girl made her daily beeline for the dress-up corner of her preschool classroom, I fretted over what plain Little Mermaid, a character who literally gives up her voice to get a man, was teaching her. As I grew, I learned that life is easier with beauty. It's easier to work and you're easier to love, and so I bought the magazines, and the clothes, and the makeup, and the jewelry. And I heard stories of no food, to be as small as those princesses. So my face changed, as did my body. Daisy was, of course, the most beautiful baby ever. I was committed to raising her without a sense of limits. I wanted her to believe neither that some behavior or toy or profession was not for her sex, nor that it was mandatory for her sex. I wanted her to be able to pick and choose the pieces of her identity freely. That was supposed to be the privilege, the prerogative of her generation. And for a while, it looked as if I was succeeding. On her first day of preschool, at age 2, she wore her favorite outfit, a pair of pinstripe overalls, and proudly toted her Thomas the Tank Engine lunchbox. It just happened that the king's son gave a ball and invited all persons of fashion to it. Our young misses were wonderfully busy in selecting the gowns, petticoats, and hairdressing that would best become them. They said to Cinderella, "Cinderella, would you not like to go to the ball?" "Alas," said she, "you only jeer me. It is not for such as I am to go to such a place." "You are quite right," they replied. "It would make people laugh to see you at the ball." Sometimes, when I need to meet the me that loves me, I can't find her, or remind her that that mirror was meant to be a curse. Since when was loving who we are made an offense? Change this physicality and that one. Don't you dare shatter the illusion that you could ever be anything beyond paper, fine flesh, and flashy teeth and fingernails. Have you ever felt so numb that it hurts? Entertain me. You can't surrender to them. You've got to remember that you are the only thing you'll ever truly have. And no, I don't mean your body. I mean you. But that ease of life never came. I was no different than the next person except in what I looked like, except stares from awful people. But they knew they could get away with it, so why not stare away? So I stopped putting in as much effort, because that attention was too unsettling. Princess culture is not all fun and games. The Disney princess brand suggests that a girl's most valuable asset is her beauty, which encourages an unhealthy preoccupation with physical appearance. For instance, 1. The more girls in the study engaged with princess culture, the more they behaved in stereotypically feminine ways. 2. Girls with a lower body image when the study began tended to be more interested in princess culture a year later. 3. There was no evidence that the girls' engagement with princess culture influenced their behavior for the better. Princesses' potential as positive, pro-social role models is limited. Somewhere along that line of aging and scrutiny and time, I was taught to despise myself. But I made sure I kept myself beautiful so someone would love me someday, so I could belong to someone someday, because that's the most important thing a little girl could ever want, right? Her godmother then touched her with her wand, and at the same instant, her clothes turned into cloth of gold and silver, all beset with jewels. This done, she gave her a pair of glass slippers, the prettiest in the whole world. Being thus decked out, she got up into her coach, but her godmother, above all things, commanded her not to stay past midnight. But I don't care. Whether it's your gender, your looks, your weight, your skin, or where your love lies, none of that matters because standards don't define you. You don't live to meet the credentials established by a madman. You are a goddamn treasure, whether you want to believe it or not. And maybe that's what everyone should be looking for. Indeed, she quite forgot what her godmother had told her. She thought it was no later than 11 when she counted the clock striking 12. She jumped up and fled, as nimble as a deer, but she left behind one of her glass slippers, which the prince picked up most carefully. All it took was one boy who, while whizzing past her on the playground, yelled, "Girls don't like trains," and Thomas was shoved to the bottom of the toy chest. Within a month, Daisy threw a tantrum when I tried to wrestle her into pants. As if by osmosis she had learned the names and gown colors of every Disney princess, and I didn't really know what a Disney princess was. The gentleman who was sent to try the slipper on had Cinderella sit down, and putting the slipper to her foot, he found that it went on very easily, as if it had been made of wax. Her two sisters were greatly astonished. She was taken to the young prince, dressed as she was. He thought her more charming than before, and a few days later, he married her. As with all of us, what I want from my daughter seems so simple. For her to grow up healthy, happy, and confident, with a clear sense of her own potential and the opportunity to fulfill it. Yet she lives in a world that tells her, whether she is 3 or 33, that the surest way to get there is to look, well, like Cinderella. Then I traveled around and met wise women who showed me that chasing beauty is not a way for someone to live. When I left them, I didn't quite recognize myself. I had changed so much and loved the change. With new light and confidence, I traveled the world to experience everything it could offer. I thought I wanted to be beautiful. Now I know I want the courage to live a life on my own terms. Thank you.